guys. Thank you very much for having me out. Unique being at a hockey clinic. I have a long hockey tie though. You know, grew up in a hockey family, played until I was about 17, until genetics took over, and there's not much room for 6'6", 280-pound, whatever, who can't skate very well. So it's a little bit of a role change, and but I'm pleased to be here and pleased to try to pass something on to you. I go to tons of clinics and I learn a lot about my sport, how to apply certain like theories, principles always, and I commend each and every one of you for coming out. As Craig was saying, you know, this is my 24th year earning my living as a university football coach. I've had a long career. I've had a fortune to be successful, and you know, started on the East Coast, St. FX, then St. Mary's, Calgary, and now I'm here on the West Coast. Football has a lot of differences than hockey, but there's a lot of similarities. And people often ask me, they say, what is the key to your success as a coach? And my success has come over building a confidence in terms of how I approach everything. And it certainly wasn't easy when I first started, and now it's easier. And what I'm going to talk about today quickly is a theory that I use. Like I said, I've started at 4 different programs. Each program that I've been part of has made it to the national final. Each time I've left, they've had winning seasons, and then I start at the bottom. There's one key thing that I believe in, and that's what I call competitive integrity. And I think that's the biggest input, or the most substantial input I can provide to you, is that at my level, I'm paid to win football games and to graduate students. And make no mistake about it, like as Coach Smith used to say to his team, you know, he goes, gentlemen, remember, academics is number 1, football number 2, right? And that's the key. Like in my environment, you got to do both very well, and it's that approach that I've taken. And so if you look at it, success, I believe, is directly proportional to your ability to apply certain characteristics into the culture of your program. And they're not just characteristics. It's not a finite number. It could be a variety of characteristics, but you as a coach will certainly determine which ones you feel confident with and which ones you're able to apply with the kind of passion, the kind of understanding that will make followers out of your athletes. Competitive integrity is a word I use a lot, and it's the theme of this presentation that I'm giving. As you can see, you know, without, my eyes aren't as good as they used to be, but competitive integrity is a philosophical approach directed by behavioral mannerisms, all of which influence coach, athlete, and program development. So when I say behavioral mannerisms, I look at personal characteristics. I look at accountability. I look at leadership, decision-making, the ability to apply science to sport. And these are things that, and like I said earlier, there's a wide variety of it. But the key is that you as a coach are responsible for the culture of your program. You as a coach are responsible for making sure that your athletes buy into your program, and that you're the one, you know, that's responsible for the success. So you're going to do what you can do as a coach to provide success. The number one thing is to apply your message and get a response from your athletes. Today I'm going to talk about 3 characteristics. And again, there's a wide variety, but I'm going to focus on 3 elements of what I think are critical to competitive integrity. Just keep my eye on the thing. Okay, the first, men, is accountability. Accountability at my level is huge, because not only does it apply, let me just backtrack for a second. At the university level, I'm responsible for taking dependent young men, 17-year-old men who leave school or who leave home, and transitioning them to independent men who are ready to start their careers, their family lives, the entire thing. Accountability is a maturity skill. Maturity is a learned skill set, okay? Kids just don't come to you as a high school senior and have the maturity skills, the decision-making skills, the ability to, the ability to see right and wrong right off the bat. It's not an automatic trait. Obviously, a lot depends on their parents and the upbringing they had. But now you start adding in a competitive environment, and it's big, right? Personal discipline, I have just in quotations here, personal discipline triumphs over genetics all the time, okay? Or we'll say 95% of the time. You can be the most gifted athlete, you can have the size, the strength, the ability to move with power, you can have the technical skills. All of that will not be applied to its potential if you do not have the mindset. Okay, and that's something that as coaches of younger athletes, and I've coached minor hockey before, basketball, lacrosse, you name it, and I get it. Okay, but the faster that some level of maturity and some level of decision making can be applied is critical. The thing that I ask my young men to do is to realize that are those same decision-making skills need to be applied to academics, need to be applied to the weight room, training, and need to be applied to on-field. By enhancing and by emphasizing those 3 areas, as well as their personal life, those 4 areas, it becomes a more regular routine. And they're able to apply just general knowledge that, you know what, my choice as a student, if I apply the same traits, can be as equal as an effective choice as a weight room, in the weight room, or on the field. Accountability with me means that you have a goal and a level that you have to attain. And the business part of my sport says to the young men that if you can't attain that goal through any variation of coaching, self-discipline, self-training, whatever, we need to go to another choice. And that's a lesson, that's a harsh lesson for young men, maybe too harsh for minor hockey or minor football, but at my level, they got to start learning that. So, and if you approach it the right way, and I believe it can be applied at younger ages to a certain set, I think you'll have a great response from your men, okay? They will start to understand that you take the personal and the emotion out of the coaching and out of the decision-making, the evaluation tools, and you apply what I refer to all the time as a business economic approach. If we can't get it done this way, we got to move to this way. And as a coach, that's what we're paid to do. Okay, that's what we're paid to do, is adapt, recognize our strengths, recognize our weaknesses, adapt, and apply a strategic plan to garner success. The second, I want to talk about the second component is group mind. And group mind, I referred to a book that I've read, it's Legacy by James Kerr. I like the word group mind, and I didn't want to get nailed like Trump's wife did last night or 2 nights ago, so I want to make sure I referred to where I got the word from. But group mind just basically says the team skills or the team goals are the important ones. Okay? Coming to UBC last year, if you look at the situation that I was put into, my teams at Calgary, I spent 9 years at Calgary. We were able to get to the national final 3 times. Unfortunately, we lost all 3 of them. But we won 6 conference championships. We put more guys into the CFL than any other program in the 9 years I was at Calgary. When I came, the difference that I saw when I left Calgary and came to UBC was shocking. And that was because I came into UBC, it was a team of mostly individuals. Individuals who were more worried about their number of receptions, the number of times they caught the ball. Sometimes they were worried beyond, they weren't worried about their teammates. And consequently, when people ask me, what is the number one thing I was able to do at UBC in 1 season? And that was to apply a group mindset within the program. Okay? Group mindsets mean that you do what's necessary to have 1 more point on the scoreboard at the end of the game. Okay, because that's the ultimate goal at my level. 1 more point on the scoreboard. And that means that some athletes may be asked to maintain a different role. Some athletes may be asked to have a more minimum role. I came into UBC, and my first year there, I can remember, I looked at the numbers. I did a lot of research prior to coming. There was a roster size of about 70, low 80s, 80-something athletes. Everything, I was busy getting to know the guys. By the time training camp came, I had between 20 and 25 athletes leave the program. And that was because the past had been that you played based on whether you were a senior versus a freshman. You placed on the longevity that you had in the program. I base my evaluation on the best athlete, whether you're first year, undersized, whatever. But that was the predominant message I was able to get to the young men who decided to remain in the program. Football is a sport at the university level that most roster sizes are between 85 to 110 athletes. Okay? There's a lot of player maintenance required. If you get into a political game, it just creates more workload for you. There's a balance, that's just impossible to maintain. After our exhibition game at University of Laval last year, we went into Laval, into Quebec City. We beat the preseason #1 team in the country. After that game, the most I had on the field during practice for the rest of the year was 57 guys. Almost half of what most normal roster sizes are. But these young men had bought into the system. Okay, they had realized that, I don't necessarily need to worry about my statistics, worry about my draft, my draft future, whatever. The #1 thing is I have to have a group mind. I've got to worry about whether my right tackle is blocking correctly. What can I do to help my right tackle? One of the major things was with the freshmen coming in. And football is has been stereotyped in the past with a lot of hazing, a lot of situations where you keep the young men, the men coming into your program as basically a lower level, right? As a second-class citizen or athlete. We were able to get that taken care of right away. By the time we were halfway through the regular season, I had guys who were competing for reps at the same position, were able to provide advice to competitors within the program. So my veteran quarterback was helping my young quarterback prepare, even though that meant that the veteran was going to have less playing time. The group mind was the number one biggest thing I was able to apply to UBC in 1 year. And it's easily, in my opinion, the key element for success when you are evaluated on wins and losses, okay? In addition with like this group mind or this team atmosphere, the leadership style has to be looked at, right? If you can look under, I have peer-to-peer enforcement, right? The old style of leadership was top-down. You still see it in some places, right? You see it within the veteran coaches in pro sports, especially in the sport of football. Down in the U.S., NCAA, there's definitely a hierarchy, a type of leadership that is top-down. And yes, it is with us too. But the key leaders are your athletes. The key leadership comes from within the athletic, in the locker room, okay? What you see now in the modern era, and I've seen it over the course of my career, is a transformation or a transition from a top-down leadership model to a peer-to-peer enforcement, okay? And if you think about it, why is that? Why has that happened? As a coach, I can be as intimidating as I want to be, okay? And it might have worked for me 20 years ago. But the way and why that's changed is like parents like you guys. Because nowadays, kids are told to aspire no matter what the odds are, okay? For those of you with daughters, 20 years ago, to tell them that they were going to play competitive hockey, might not have been a reality. Now I've got young girls who actually call me or email me to see if there's a chance they can play football at this level. And because of that, the top-down doesn't work anymore. It's the peer-to-peer. Where you're going to get more leadership from is when your athletes can influence their teammates by being bigger, by being faster, by being stronger, by being better technically more sound. That's where their leadership's going to come from. And if put into a competitive environment, I'm going to take notice when a guy who I'm competing with within the program, and I look over there and I say, man, he is trained hard, he has disciplined himself, and if I want to play and compete within the program, I need to be able to do the same. It's not going to come from that individual getting in my face and telling me, that you're inferior, that your attitude is poor, that your work ethic is insufficient. It's going to come from a competitive element where I want to compete with this guy. I know what level he's at. I better do that myself. And peer-to-peer enforcement is key. Create stress. Okay, and again, I'm talking as a university, a coach of young men, okay? Let me tell you about my personal philosophy with coaching, okay? I'm a believer that coaching tenures have a time limit, okay? If this was this year and I was still at University of Calgary, I could run my program with my cell phone. I literally would not have to leave home, and I had everything in position. I could call up, make sure this recruit is handled this way. How's the surgery coming with this kid? And you can delegate, okay? Delegation as a coach is a skill, and it's a good one to have. You have to be able to let your coaches coach and have to be able to pass on responsibility. But as a head coach, delegation is a double-edged sword, because if you become complacent because I know my assistant will do the job, the fire that you're brought in to provide will extinguish. Okay? Head coaches are responsible for the culture of a program. The culture has to be one of success it has to be one of success. Coming into UBC, I stressed myself because I went from a team that we won about 80% of our wins. I think I had 6 losses at Calgary my last 7 years. To a team that had 2 records above 500 in the last 20. 2 seasons where they were over 500 in the last 20. That stress made me work harder. That stress made me more passionate. That stress made me make sure that I'm prioritizing what needs to be done. Last year I probably worked harder than I have in the last decade. And that's because I had to prove to my colleagues, to those that were looking at my decision to change programs, that I was right. If I failed, I don't think it would help the way I was viewed. And having a little bit of personal pride, I felt it was necessary for me to go ahead and just flat out outwork. The same thing has to be said to your athletes at any level, guys. You need to take the comfort out of the preparation, the comfort out of the expectations. Okay, with the younger athletes, it may be just a marginal level of discomfort. With the older ones, they can take a little bit more stress. But what that stress will do is it'll force them to respond and adapt. And those are the guys, the men, the athletes in my world who can adapt to increased expectations and our stress are the ones that are going to be on the field when you can win. Those are the ones you got to be able to put on the field. We, again, going into this year, my team hadn't been out of a conference in the last, I think, since 1997. Everything that we accomplished this year was beyond what the norm was. But that stress and managing that stress, I thought, was a big part. Okay, and I think I was asked to stop at 5 to answer questions here. Is there anything that I could maybe expand on or talk about from this group here, how it might apply to hockey, how it might apply in some other aspect?
Blake, can you talk about how do you expand stress on your players and in your program? Does it start in practice? Is it in one-on-one meetings, or how do you develop that?
At my level, or within minor hockey?
In your level, in your program.
At my level, I just, the 3 things I talked about was accountability, group mind, and stress. The first thing that I might do is explain to the guys that we are not an optional activity, which was part of the issue I had coming in here. If you can believe it, we spend millions of dollars on our sport at UBC. And I had some athletes coming in, thinking that it was okay to be late for meetings, okay to miss training, you name it, okay? That is the first thing that you put into, was an accountability factor that you need to be on time for meetings, that it's not optional to miss workouts, and that when you're on the field, you need to be able to perform like you're asked, or we have to find another option. And it's obviously an approach that high-level sport takes, but just that simple set of, the accountable part of it, force the guys to stress out, because you would see that they may be used to just, walking slowly from class to practice. You saw that right away, that the locker room would change because the guys would be on time. If you weren't on time, the peer-to-peer evaluation was unfavorable, and you can't let your peers down. So simple things, and if you're coaching minor level athletes, simple things like being on time, simple things like hustling, like playing to your fullest, creating that level of expectation. There's some level that can be applied to each age group in sport. And as coaches, you just got to, ask yourself, okay, what is realistic? What is too much? But there are ways to create stress always.
You talk a little bit about your recruiting and how important that is and how you go about it and the keys when you're trying to recruit someone into your program.
Yeah, if you look back here, like one of the things I talked about was the philosophy of competitive integrity. Okay, and one of the things I say here is that it's also coach development. Okay, so how I recruit athletes fits what my expectations are, which may seem to be like a no-brainer type situation, but what you see in sport a lot is coaches, especially in the sport of football, they'll cast a big net, and they'll take anybody that gets caught in that net and then try to work them out through the process of training camp, through the years. I recruit with the idea that I need to have young men who will be on time, will be able to outwork their teammates. I make sure that is clear right from the start, and that the recruiting process is so vast in the sport of football. We basically recruit the size of a CIS hockey team each and every year. That often you get into a quantitative debate. Do I need numbers or do I need quality? Quality is how I recruit, and when I go in to talk to a family, go in to talk to parents, I explain to them the necessity that this young man comes in with a certain understanding that these are going to be requirements placed on him immediately, and there will be additional requirements in the future as he matures and starts to buy into the program.
Just wanted to touch on the size of the roster that you have to deal with. And on a hockey team, it only takes one or two guys to sort of create problems in the dressing room and amongst the group. How do you deal with that, and having a roster size of 57, 80 people? You must have a lot more of those.
It's a difficult thing. The key with football is discipline. You're dealing with a lot of football athletes are different than hockey athletes. From my understanding, is the majority or a lot of hockey athletes come from middle-class families, two working parents, just generally a more affluent background than a lot of football athletes. Football athletes, a lot of kids who maybe come from maybe single-parent families, tougher economic status, whatever. The key is, again, is to when you start the initial recruiting, is to let them know the expectations. Now, once they're in the program, you have to be able to administer a level of, like we call it, I've referred to it as peer enforcement, but ultimately it comes down to trying to keep the emotion out of it and making sure that the kids realize that their decision-making will impact, the way that they're looked upon at the team, the way that they're, able to perform with the team. It can get tough, but it starts with the kind of athletes you bring into the program. By keeping, a structured scenario where they need to be at weight training at the right time. They need to be on time. You eliminate the individualism that can often lead to, tough situations. Yes, we do have sometimes, we do have guys that have to be dealt with, right? And we deal with them. But a lot of it can be curtailed if you're able to look at the character, make sure that from moment one, they're totally understanding of what you expect in terms of behavior.
Artie, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.